Mark McCabe, thanks a million for joining me on the show. As I said in the outreach email, and I heard you at EP, man, it just blew my mind. I think it's in the top three performances I've ever seen. I seen
Oh,
Lisa Lashes in oh my god, Hi-Fi 2006.
oh wow,
Laura Massa in that very tent you were playing in as well, in
wow.
EP in 2017. But your performance at EP 2025, man, was just rocked it. Like, it was the Insomnia and Push the Feeling mix. Like, I have the
Yeah,
video on
yeah.
my phone. I'll try play a clip of it in the short. But man, it
Wow.
just rocked it. And then there was the Zombie Nation. You had all the classics, man. But how good did that feel? Like, looking out at that crowd.
Like amazing and kind of um unexpected because I've been really lucky with the Electric Picnic that anytime I've ever done anything, it's always been something kind of special. And I was always hopeful that this year in particular it would be extra special because even though I've played it before, it's been more for corporate. So I
Yeah.
haven't actually been booked by the event itself. So this year was the first year that I've actually been booked by the Electric Picnic. Like I was part of the official bill as opposed to being a guest on one of the corporate stages. So I really like wanted it to be something good and magical. And I think well, judging from your reaction anyway, I
Yeah.
think I managed to achieve that, but it was yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's something that I didn't take for granted because I was up against Sam Fender. So
Yeah.
he was on the main stage. So I was kind of like, oh God, here we go. I've been waiting for that moment where it all feels like it's collapsed and it's all gone wrong and it's all kind of it's over, And I was like, Jesus, don't let Electric Picnic 25 be that moment. So obviously the previous act finished and there's a 45-minute changeover. So the tent literally goes from being absolutely rammed and hopping to nothing. And it's like, it's a full reset. Everybody walks away. Few people, stick around, but it's literally a dead tent. There's nothing happening there for 45 minutes. And 45 minutes in festival time is a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was 10 minutes before I was looking out and it was kind of starting to get busy, and then 5 minutes before it just people started to ram themselves in. So and then we kicked off and it was 60 minutes I think of just it was
Hopping.
I loved it. Yeah, it's it's something that I won't forget for a long time, let's just say.
Yeah.
For the year that was in it and everything that festival means to me, it was a magical night. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear you say that you were like, wow, that
Yeah,
was
man, it
that
was
was
hopping
amazing,
in the tent, like, and it was packed. Uh, but the song, man, the sound in that tent, that's a magical tent. Like, I think that
Yeah,
is, like, regardless of the main stage, that tent, man, has had some epic performances, and yours
yeah.
is up there. The way the sound reverberates, man, and Mimi Lane, like, so was she the girl on the original Maniac song, or like, her voice was insane as
Yeah,
well.
she's insane. She's great. So no, she's on the new version which we released
Ah, the
this year. So the
remastered.
the remastered version. So it was Shelley Buckspan who
Ah,
originally sang it way back in the day. And interestingly enough, Mimi went to a college called BIM to study music, and Shelley Buckspan was actually her teacher. So she coached her. She was her vocal coach. And that's just totally random. It didn't, there was no, we only figured that out, I think, after I'd started to work with Mimi, that she was actually one of Shelley's sort of college children. So, but her voice, her vocal is just insane. And I keep pushing things at her and sort of saying, what you think? Will you try this? And she takes it on and she absolutely, destroys it. She's an amazing, amazing vocalist. And I'm really lucky to have her as part of the performance. And I think she killed it that night in
she
particular.
killed it. And man, her stage presence up there as well. Like, when she did,
Yeah.
oh, when she sang Cascada, was like, I just
Yeah.
got goosebumps, and you
Yeah.
could feel the reaction in the crowd. People just like stilled into this moment of awe almost.
Yeah.
And then when she
Cool.
did the Cranberries, like from my perspective, it was just, oh, it was godly. But like, what was it like looking out? Are you just in the zone? Like, what's going through a DJ's head? I always wonder. Like, when they have this packed they're playing to thousands of people. Are you just in the zone? Are you feeding off the energy, or what's happening?
I'm kind of looking out and making sure that it's actually working, that people
Okay.
are interested and that they're engaged with what's going on. There's a thin line between overdoing it and shouting too much and looking for responses too much, and actually letting people get into the music, enjoy the actual track for what it is. So you've got to pick your moments as to when you're going to sort of step in and tell people to put their hands up or scream or make some noise or something like that. But
And
yeah, it's funny. It's a weird experience because it's almost surreal. It's like, is this actually really happening? Am I here with 15,000 people? And this is actually working and it's going off. It's a really weird experience.
I can imagine, and it's like
Yeah,
very energetic, like because everyone's feeding off each other's energy, off the
yeah,
music's energy, and it's like this kind of mass hypnosis, nearly, of everyone in this like
yeah,
one state.
yeah, yeah. It's great, and it's something that the more I do, the more I get comfortable with it. And I guess the more I'm trying to just ensure that the energy is up there like that. So, I mean, if you're in the audience, you should be looking at my show as far as I'm concerned and just going, wow, this is like, oh, deadly. Oh my God, I can't believe you just played that. Oh, listen to what's coming in. So, yeah, it's a very, uh, it's a weird experience because,
Yeah.
I've grown up kind of playing clubs and smaller venues. And then in the last few years, it's just gone. I don't really play clubs anymore. I play arenas, which is really weird
Yeah.
because they're much bigger. But
And there's
that
a lot more
balance,
people to
yeah, yeah,
excite and kind of
exactly.
energize.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to kind of project a little bit more of yourself. Like everything has to be slightly bigger. Even the gestures you make, or when you speak, you have to speak that a little bit slower because it's in a much bigger space and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
luckily, it seems to be working, and it seems like people are into what I'm kind of putting together. So
Yeah, like just a quick story before on a sidetrack. I remember being out I was living in Toronto in 2010 and 11, and I remember they had like one of the biggest nightclubs in North America. It was called the Government, spelled with a G. It was huge. I think it held 5,000, nine
well,
dance floors. Like, so there was like a hip hop area, there was an R&B area. And I'll never forget, man. It was like, it was really cold. I think it was like a November night anyway. We went on a Saturday night and Maniac came on the
no
main
way,
floor and the place erupted. Like, it
no
was like,
way.
and this is what? So it would have been 2010, 11. So it was 10 years on from when the track came out and stuff. It was like,
Wow,
yeah, and that's over in Toronto, like in Canada, a different
that's
continent and
crazy.
all.
That's crazy.
That track carried, and we'll get into all that. But do you know, I actually want to kind of nearly go back to where it kind of all began. Where did the love of DJing come out of? Did it come naturally? Did it happen by accident? Where did the DJ starting out from?
It. I think the seed was planted somehow by probably my dad. He wasn't a DJ. He was actually the dean of Christchurch in Dublin.
Okay,
So he was a reverend basically. That was his gig,
yeah,
and he used to do the school discos for my national school way back. And he had an amp, and he had a speaker, and he used to record Top of the Pops, and he'd basically just play out the recordings of Top of the Pops at this school disco. And I just remember being absolutely fascinated with the fact that this box and this speaker could play music so loud, that you could actually turn it up and you could fill a
yeah,
whole hall with this noise. So I think that's where it kind of started, because I took that box and that speaker, and I plugged my own tape deck into it and started to sync tape decks together. Um, like this is 7 or 8 years of age.
wow,
And then I kind of got interested in doing parties for friends where I'd literally just show up and play my music collection as such. And that then transferred to kind of an obsession and an interest in radio. And I suppose that's where it all kind of kicked off for me, was with a pirate station here in Dublin called Pulse FM, which was like the only commercial dance station on it air at the time. And it kind of set things up for the regional youth stations that now exist today, like iRadio, Spin Southwest, or Spin, or any of the kind of youth radio. There was none of that. So we were basically sort of serving that youth audience. And from that, we used to run gigs. And I got asked, would you be interested in, playing at this gig? And I just started playing these gigs and just became well known in Dublin as this DJ that was on this pirate station.
Mark, when you say pirate radio, like, what does that actually mean? Like, it's just not a licensed radio. Is it legal? Like,
It's illegal, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So it's totally illegal, and it was at a time when they were actually pursuing. They were actually raiding the transmitter sites, and they were raiding the studios, and they were taking the equipment away and stuff like that. Because we were a real threat to commercial radio. Because we were stealing their listeners. So the commercial stations, the legit stations, were putting pressure on the regulation body to take us off air. So they tried to do that quite a few times. And eventually it got to the point where we became so popular that they were like, well, look, we're going to issue a license for this type of a station. So you have to come off the air now, We lost it, unfortunately. We did apply for the license, but we didn't get it. But
that's fascinating. So,
yeah,
but
good
like, what
times.
was there was only a handful probably of stations, was it? Like, or 2FM maybe, within Ireland. It wasn't what like you said, the more regional or the smaller stations. Like, iRadio is fairly big now and stuff, but
yeah, it was. Yeah, it's funny because like Tony Fenton, who was a massive DJ on 2FM, he was ringing us on the station. Like, he was listening to us, so he was listening to see what we were playing, so he could then go and play it somewhere else. So he, the phone would ring in the studio and pick it up and be like, hey guys, it's Tony Fenton here, I'm just wondering, what was that track you played? And then he'd go off and he'd play it on the 2FM hotline or whatever it was at the time. So yeah, it was mad, but it was cool because it was real. It was 100% authentic. We were into the music was growing, getting bigger. Club culture was exploding. Ibiza was massive. All the super clubs were taking off, and we just happened to be there at the right time to sort of bring all of this to the audience that already really wanted it, So,
and what year are we talking? Are we talking like late 90s here?
Yeah, sort of. I joined Pulse FM in 1996, and we turned it off in 1999. So it was that 3-year period, which was that real sort of growth of super clubs and Positiva Records, and all those labels were suddenly having massive chart success. And yeah, it was mad. I mean, like Fragmatoka's Miracle was just released. It was a new tune. I was like, Darude Sandstorm was like, have you heard this new Darude tune?
Like, man, I remember back then, like, I'd put a tape deck into like a radio, and I'd be recording the songs on like a tape deck, and then you'd be listening to them back. And I just have such a memory of Darude Sandstorm, like hearing it on Midlands Radio 3 or whatever I was listening to, and being like, record, catching half the song on a grainy piece of cassette tape, like
hoping they wouldn't talk over the end of it.
Yeah. But so what gear were you running? Were you running vinyl then, or were you like, what was the median?
It was on the radio. We were playing CDs.
Oh, CD,
yeah. And mini disc, which was a Sony little square mini disc, because you could record to that. And then for gigs, mostly it was playing vinyl. And that was just because you're not a DJ unless you're using vinyl. That's kind of the way it was. So you had to carry this flipping 2-ton box around with you. With all your tunes, and most of them were scratched or well worn or whatever, but it was a total sort of flex to show up with your record box and plonk it up on the table and pull out your tunes.
And your vinyls there, it was so organic, wasn't it? Like, when you think of it compared to like now, I used to have a set of Newmark. They're like scratch turntables. I used to have like a load of vinyls, and like an Egypt sold them all years ago. That were pretty savage. It was like Tidy Boys and like really good stomper tunes. But all gone. Sold them probably for feck all. I can barely even remember. But
They're
Yeah.
probably
Oh,
up on eBay now for a couple of €100, like, or
yeah.
something annoying like that.
Yeah.
And the mad thing about it is that, like, I mean, now, if you're playing a tune, I can say, here, could you airdrop that to me, and you'll get it straight away. Whereas, like, if you heard somebody playing a tune, and the tunes were like what the tunes that have become classics now, even like Goriella, or Madagascar, The Art of Trance. If you heard somebody playing that, or even going back a few years, like San Francisco or Gat Deck or Passion, you'd be like, "What's that?" And they'd tell you the name of it, but there's no way you were getting it.
Yeah.
It was like a
Happy
limited
discs,
edition,
maybe.
white label. Yeah, if you were lucky. So when you had a physical copy of something, it was your copy, and there was no one getting that copy. It wasn't a case of, oh, well, you can just record it. I'll share it with you. That's what gave you kind of your weight and value as a DJ, was the fact that you actually owned these physical copies, so you could play them out.
That is so what it's.
Which is
I'm not
mad, yeah.
because it's not that long ago. Like
No,
it's 40 year ago, 1996. Yeah, 29 year ago. Like it's not
yeah.
that long ago.
Well, it kind of is, but
Yeah. Yeah.
as you get older, you go, it's not that long ago, but actually,
Yeah.
if you're 20, it's like that was forever ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it changed really quickly, I think, is the thing, from 2000 to even 2010. That period was just like going from sort of vinyl mostly to CD to USB to Napster, internet, to Spotify, to SoundCloud, to YouTube. Everything just became, suddenly everything was everywhere. So back then, it was really, what we were doing was way more unique, because it wasn't that you could just do it in your bedroom. You had to have the equipment to do it. You had to have access to the tunes. So it was a lot different, and there wasn't as many people doing it.
Yeah.
Loads of people wanted to be DJs, but the ones that were actually doing it at the time, it was kind of a privilege to be in that position.
Yeah. And what was the big What was the big nightclubs then around kind of Dublin at that time? Like,
At that time.
where would you be playing? Like, or were you just doing radio, or were you doing a few like gigs
No,
in
doing
like
clubs as well. Yeah,
clubs as well? Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we ran our own gigs in the Temple Theatre, which was a big church at the top of O'Connell Street that they converted into a super club. And it was insane. It was just like, there'll never be a venue like it, because it was an 18th century church that they literally hung a PA in, and set up a lighting rig. And the main floor was upstairs where the main church used to be. And then you could go downstairs, and there was a second room in what was called the crypt, which was this kind of brick, arched area, and just filthy. Absolutely, like scaldy rave, like, but
Yeah.
absolutely amazing at the same time. So, and then upstairs, the main room was kind of where the sort of the big names came in. We ran our shows there. Part of it we filmed. Part of the Maniac video is actually shot in the Temple Theatre. So, but other than that, it was like the Temple of Sound. It was probably Redbox at the time, which then became Tripod, and Pod, and what were the other big clubs? They were the two main clubs. Then there was a lot smaller venues, like Club Zazu in Temple Bar. There was Club M. There was Hollywood Nights, Bondi up in Stillorgan. There was loads. To be honest, there was loads. Definitely way more than there is now.
Yeah, it kind of died a bit after COVID, didn't it? It was
It
like,
did.
you haven't really come back. Not that I haven't been going to clubs too much anymore, but
Yeah.
what was the music? So was it like, because I remember now, probably what year that I'll never forget that orange Euphoria, the Hard House Euphoria, that orange
Oh yeah.
CD. Like that was just, it was like a cherished piece of gold you'd have at a house party.
Yeah.
It was just so good, that CD. But like that was Hard House. But like, what was the kind of, like, if you were playing the Temple Theatre, what would a set been like? Is it maybe a mix of stuff, or did you have like kind of a genre that you were sticking to?
It was probably like, a lot of the shows we did in the Temple Theatre were under 18s, because we were, a youth station. So we didn't
Yeah.
really, we did a few over 18s gigs. Like the big tunes would have been like DJ Quicksilver, Bellissima. You know,
Yeah.
that was new. Red Five, I Love You Stop. Sort of the big crossover trancey hard house tunes. Sandstorm would be another one. Commisera, Show Me Love. DJ Sakin and Friends, Protect Your Mind, which was the theme from Braveheart.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh God, I
all of
haven't
that
heard
kind of
that in
stuff. Like
years.
so, but even like JX, There's Nothing I Won't Do, Son of a Gun, all of those tunes were still big as well. So a lot of the stuff from the early '90s made its way up towards the end of the '90s as well. So and then some like classic ones like SPQ or Unlimited Dreams or all the classics basically. I mean, Fragment, Toka's Miracle, Gala, Freed from Desire.
And it's
Better
still,
off,
they
and
still, when they
still,
get played these
yeah,
days, people just
it's
go and
mad.
lose it. You know.
It's mad. Better Off Alone and all of that.
Yeah.
So it is. It's funny that those tunes that like are still working today were the tunes back then. But then in between there would have been some absolute classics that you'd just lash in like Free Fall, Skydive, stuff like that. Hard House was much more underground.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was the likes of the Porn Kings, Up to No Good, and that type of stuff. But the hard house that we would have been playing would have been the more commercial side of it. Like,
Yeah.
it was the likes of guys like Ken O'Flanagan and Mark Kavanagh and people who were playing all the Tidy Boys stuff and supporting Lisa Lashes and
Yeah.
all of those heads when they used to play. So
Yeah.
we were really more the commercial side of the dance industry. There was Club FM on at the time. There was another station called Hot FM, and they kind of dealt with the more sort of underground clubby stuff. We had an underground clubby show that was presented by a guy called Al Gibbs.
Yeah.
But mostly we were trying to be sort of mass appeal with commercial dance music as opposed to being, the ones playing all the sort of cool 12 inches.
Yeah. And at what stage then does Maniac come into the picture here? So 96 to 99, working at Pulse, doing a bit in the Temple Theatre, like playing a lot of music, but then going into the creation of music. Where does that fork in the road come?
Yeah. So that came from basically the Temple Theatre is ultimately where it came from. Before that, it was a track. It's sure you can edit this if you need to, but it's kind of a long story.
Go for it.
I'll give it. I'll give you the whole story. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So, 1995, and a dance act called Four Rhythm released a version of Maniac with a rapper on it called Al. I'm not sure what his surname is off the top of my head. I think it was not Al Foran, but a guy called Al. They went to get permission to release the track, and they were told by the people who own the original Maniac track that they had to keep the original lyric or something like that. So they couldn't change the lyric, so they had to rap the lyric or something. On that version, there was a 12-inch remix that was done by the Soundcrowd Orchestra, which was Mark Kavanagh and Mr. Spring. That 12-inch version was then taken by DJs around Dublin, and they started to do a rap on top of that. One of those DJs was Al Gibbs, who I was working with on the station. Mm-hmm. Al was focusing on a more underground career, so he was playing downstairs in the crypt in the Temple Theatre, and I was playing upstairs. So there was kind of a demand by people who were coming to our shows to do Maniac, to play Maniac and, do your version of the rap. So, I mean, it lived in places like the Wesley Disco, and in places like Hollywood Nights and Lautrec's and Greystones and all these clubs around Dublin. So on one particular night, I had a version that I was doing that used some of Al's lyric, but also used, some of my own lyric. Yeah. And a lot of the time I would just freestyle the whole thing. So we recorded it in the Temple Theatre one night. And the version that I recorded that night, we started to play out on Pulse. So people started to get familiar with that particular version. So long story short, when Pulse came off the air, Billy from Abbey Discs approached me and said, "Would you be interested in releasing this? Because I think there's an audience for it." So we went, okay. So we went back. Tim Hannigan re-recorded the backing track with Simon Fitzpatrick from Four Rhythm. They created a new version, which is the version that you would know now.
Yeah.
We went and recorded the vocal at a local kids disco in Clontarf Cricket Club, and basically we released it. It was like, it was just okay. Like, we didn't have a photo for the cover, so it was like, we're going to need a photo. It's like, okay, I'll get a picture taken.
That is
And
wild. It's
off
just
we
that kind
went,
of
you know.
organic.
So yeah, it literally was like, I had nothing to do. Billy said, do you want to do this? I was like, okay. Yeah, and that was it. And we didn't really have any expectation whatsoever. Like, we knew that it would probably do okay in Dublin, but I was like, this isn't going to work in Galway or Cork or, in the more rural places. So, but sure, look, it's Dublin, and sure, I'm doing nothing else, so I might as well. So, so it went in the first week, I think, at number 2, and then it dropped to number 1, and it stayed there for pretty much the entire summer of 2000 for 10 weeks. Yeah, and beat off the likes of Backstreet Boys, Westlife, Madonna, all these labels that were spending hundreds of thousands on promoting their, big name artists. And here was this little independent release called Maniac 2000, wiping the floor with sales figures. So
Unreal.
yeah, it was crazy.
And did you, like, no marketing, anything? It was just, it grew out of this kind of
No.
organic. That is so wild.
Yeah, and the thing about it was that at that time, there was chart shows. So once you charted, you were automatically featured on all of these chart shows. So there used to be a chart show on the TV as well called Top 30 Hits.
Yeah.
So we had to create a video because it was like, damn, we've got no video. Like, what, we need to give them something to play on the TV. So it was weird because it went from something that was quite personal and local to all of us to being something that was suddenly all over the country. And people started going, oh, this is crazy. What is this? But also saying, this is shit. What is this crap? Yeah, turn it off. Like, it was up there against some classic tunes. And some people really appreciated it, but some people absolutely despised it.
Well, I'd say the record companies, like, if you're pumping maybe a few million there and to get, like, your band, your singer, the top spot, keep them in the charts, keep them on the radio, and this little indie record suddenly just blows up. Like, they must have kind of had been like, okay,
they were pissed.
We need to knock these guys off.
Yeah, they were pissed. They were definitely pissed. But it was the first time really that, an independent track had come along and managed to sort of break through the major record label sort of stronghold that they had on the industry. Because a lot of the time it was a case of that, look, if you want to release a track, you have to go through a label. And the only way that you had access to studios or producers was through a label. So it was really, this track was one of those first tracks to do that. After that, then there was a track by, I don't know if you remember, Oxide and Neutrino, and it was the remix of the Casualty theme tune. That was kind of then the UK going, oh, well, let's look at what kids are doing in their bedrooms, because it was possible to actually record stuff and produce stuff in your bedroom. And then there was the White Lady, or what's it called? White Woman, I think it's called, or something like that. But that was another independent sort of producer in their bedroom. So suddenly it went from being, oh, you're Westlife or Boyzone or Backstreet Boys or Madonna or All Saints or all these really sort of polished popular pop acts, to, oh, well, these are guys that are doing this like completely underground and away from sort of major labels. So it was the turning point where all of that changed, which was exciting.
It must have been, because SoundCloud then would have been a few years later, and, well, that could have been a good few years later.
Yeah, a good few years
later.
That kind of
democratized music, like, because suddenly people didn't need, from what I understand anyway, people didn't need the label. Like SoundCloud, you see so many SoundCloud rappers or big rappers get their break on SoundCloud, or
For sure.
DJs as well.
Yeah, I mean, labels are literally like, if you haven't got a rating on SoundCloud, if you haven't got plays, they'll be like, we're not really interested. You know, they will go to SoundCloud and look at your SoundCloud profile before they even consider signing you, which is kind of a little bit counterproductive, because people don't really need those labels anymore, because they can just do it themselves. They can self-release, you know. But that was unheard of around 2000. It was just, you just couldn't do it, really, you know.
Yeah.
It was all physical sales as well. You know, it was cassettes and CDs and vinyl. It wasn't digital. Like Napster was kind of only in its infancy, and LimeWire. And as far as everybody was concerned, this was highly illegal. And don't you dare go online and download something for free, you know? That's the messaging that we were all getting. So people were, you know, literally going into shops to buy their music. HMV was, you know, flying. Golden Discs was a big store. Tower Records, you know, they were all the big, that's where you went and that's how you got your music. And when Maniac was released, that was where it started to turn, and people started to realize that you don't need to have big budgets, and something as, you know, raw and unprofessional as Maniac 2000 can actually beat off, you know,
The big
superstars, you know.
the big budgets. That's the thing. But like, do you know what? There's almost an element there where I missed that day when you had the CDs you could choose for, the excitement of going and buying a CD. Like sometimes I feel like we have the kind of enjoyment gets diluted because you have access to everything. Like Spotify, you can have every song pretty much out there.
Yeah.
You know, at the press of a button. But there was something so magical about, you know, going into HMV. You know, maybe having saved up for an album. It could be like £11 or 11 or €12, whatever it was, and the excitement of getting home to play it. And I think that magic gets lost. Like obviously it's great having so much access to music, but there's a kind of magic that does get lost when you have too much abundance of choice.
Yeah, and it's going back to that thing that I was saying, that if you had a copy of something, you were literally the only person with that. I mean, that changed to a certain extent when CD-Rs came along, which allowed you to record onto CD.
Yeah.
So people started to share music that way. But before that, there was something, like you say, for me, I would hear a track on one of the stations, like Club FM, and Punchinella San Francisco is like a perfect example of it. I don't know whether you know the tune, but it's a massive, massive tune. And you'd hear it all the time on the radio, but you could never, the only way that you could get it would be if you recorded it on tape yourself. So when you actually managed to get yourself a physical copy of that and be able to bring it home and to play it, you know, from start to finish without any interruption or anybody talking on the top of it, and to be able to control how that, you know, record played, that was really something, you know. And that's something that a whole, well, generations now just will never understand, because it's literally like, oh, what's that song? You know, Shazam, and there it is, and grand, I've got it. YouTube to MP3, and it's mine. You know, it's super convenient and it's great, but there is, like you say, there is something about that discovery and that inability to be able to own something until a certain time, you know. That's definitely,
and there's a tangibility about holding the record, looking at the art and the cover. I used to love, I remember like the Marshall Matters LP when it came out, like the excitement of opening the booklet, looking in at the artwork, seeing the tracks, like that tangibility where you can hold it, where, like, you know, when everything's kind of in the digital ether, you know,
it doesn't exist.
Ownership. Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
you can hear it. It is
exist.
there, and it sounds great, but it's that tangibility that's missing that I crave, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I still have a record player now, and I go back to the old vinyls. And not that it sounds too much different, but there's something about the process of taking the vinyl out, putting the needle down on it, hearing the little crackle at the start that just gives, maybe it's a nostalgia thing, it's kind of craving for nostalgia, but yeah, it's like that, and then sit down with a nice drink. It's good. You know. But Mark, come here, so right, this happens anyway, like that blows up. And what happens to life then? Like, is it like, you know, there's a, do we try get on radio? Like, where does your life fork off to here after the success of Maniac?
So I was really lucky that the day that we went off air with Pulse. Now I lived Pulse, like slept it,
Yeah.
drank it, ate it, was there from first thing, in the day till last thing at night. I was running the station. I wasn't just on the air. I was programming the music for it and everything as well. So it went from being something that 7 days a week, me and all my other mates that were involved with it, we were all together doing something, to then it not being there anymore. We couldn't go in the following day and, throw up the fader and do our show as we would usually do. I was really lucky that I got a call from 2FM the day after saying, listen, we're recruiting some DJs and we're wondering whether you'd be interested in maybe presenting, which was just for me, because back in 2000, 2FM and RTE was like, there's no bigger.
Yeah.
It was like national radio. It was like, wow, this is amazing. So it was kind of, I was actually doing a few fill-in shows for 2FM at the same time as kind of getting this plan together to release Maniac. So I was also lucky that, once Maniac came out and it charted, 2FM was behind it, because they were like, hey, this is one of our DJs, So it went crazy. Like, it went to, being on TV, doing interviews, radio interviews nationwide. That was the big difference. I was kind of used to a little bit of fame around Dublin.
Yeah.
But the fact that there was people in Cork and Belfast and places like that wanting to talk to me. And then, we had labels coming over from the UK saying, this is going to be massive in the UK. We want to sign this. We want to, we'll write you a check right now to, get the rights to it and stuff like that. So it went way too fast for us because we weren't prepared for it. And to be honest, it all sort of fell apart.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
But see, it would have been hard to prepare, like, because like there probably wasn't, it's like to prepare for something like that. Now you just type into Google, like you'd see a YouTube video of everything you need to know before you start. Like, but back then, like if you're, like it must have been a whirlwind, and then like you could fall foul to someone just taking all your money and you getting very little and stuff. But how were you navigating it then? Was it just fell apart, it fizzled out, or was it this deal just doesn't sound right?
It's like you say. I mean, the best example I can give you is that, like, you're literally up there beside the Backstreet Boys and Madonna. And they were two of the biggest acts in the world at that time. Madonna was in her absolute peak, and the same with the Backstreet Boys. For you, when people are reading out, this week's chart, at number 3, it's the Backstreet Boys. At number 2, it's Madonna. At number 1, it's Mark McCabe. It's like, what? It's a very strange world to be in. And to be unprepared for it is just disastrous. So I guess how it went for me was that I did what most people would do in that situation, in that I was very sort of shocked to begin with. And then I kind of started to recognize and realize the hate that was out there. So I went and did a U-turn in terms of, going, oh, well, this is just a calling card. I want to be a real cool, credible DJ like Carl Cox and Paul Oakenfold and Judge Jules and, Danny Rampling and all of these DJ heroes that I had. The problem with Maniac was that it wasn't a dance track. It was more like a commercial pop hit. So I was being sort of thrown in with that sort of category of music, and that wasn't what I was about. So I started to struggle in the sense that I couldn't make things make sense. I couldn't make what I was doing as a DJ and what I was playing on the radio or what I was playing or wanted to play in clubs match up with Maniac. Okay. It was like, how do you go from this kind of music to Maniac? Because we weren't talking about something that was nostalgic at the time and sat well with all of these other, tracks like it does today. But back then it was like, this doesn't belong in the world of trance or Gatecrasher or Creamfields, and you're not cool enough and credible enough for all of that. So it was a real struggle for me. And I listened to the hate more so than I listened to any of the positivity. I didn't see the positivity. That was the problem. I didn't really have that connection with people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I love that track. Oh, it's so great. That's amazing." I was just hearing, my peers in the dance world sort of saying, what is this? Like, this is shit, you know?
I get you.
So,
Oh,
and
that's yeah. No, sorry, go ahead. And
yeah, it wasn't great, to be honest. it was, it was a little bit shit. And at the same time, I was kind of learning how to produce, because I didn't produce Maniac. The backing track was produced by Simon and Tim. I put together and made a mess of the live element of it. So recorded the vocals. So, I could do stuff, but I wasn't actually capable of producing my own tracks at that point. So that's like with any of the money that I got as an advance, I put that into a studio and I started to learn how to produce. So, and very quickly I put records out with Twisted Records in New York, which was Danny Tenaglia's label. He was a really cool, super cool DJ at the time, and that label was super cool. So on one side I was kind of, doing this super cool tribal techno thing, and then on the other side it was Maniac. And like I say, the problem I had was it just didn't make sense. So I pretty much just kind of walked away from it, to be honest with you. I went, okay, that's that. I got signed by Universal, straight after as well, and just couldn't sort of find my flow in terms of where do you go from there. How do you follow up that track that everybody has said, is one of the biggest tracks ever released in Ireland? It's 10 weeks at number one. What's next? There was no obvious sort of next step, and it was it was a one-hit wonder track. There was never going to be anything that was going to be sort of bigger than it. So yeah, I walked away from it, and I just decided that's it. I'm just kind of done with DJing, and I'd much rather just be in the background. And I recorded and set up my own studio and recorded bands and recorded orchestras and choirs, and just really sort of got involved with the sort of creative process of recording albums for other people, not dance related at all, because the world had turned to like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or Kings of Leon, and the Divine Comedy, and all the music scene and everything that was becoming popular at that time was more indie rock related. There was this kind of resurgence of indie rock around 2004, 2005, and Nickelback, and all that stuff, So there wasn't really a place. Dance music was dead as far as people were concerned, or it had gone back underground, or it had become super commercial. So I just didn't feel that there was a place for me. So I just put my head into other things within RTE and developing digital radio stations and running my studio as well.
And was that creative flame then still burning in? Like do you look back on that with regret? Do you feel what did they, some of the opportunities, did they allow for the flexibility that you wanted to, I suppose, maybe become that Carol Cox, that Paul Oakenfield? Or was it a more where the labels were trying to just recreate the success of one tune and kind of keep you within that pigeonhole?
Yeah, no, they were definitely, well, they didn't, there was no real sort of artistic direction from the label. It was just, we know this guy had a massive hit, so how can we, make it better? And they were also focused on, I remember I was flown over to London to meet with Dario G, who did Sunshine. And it was hilarious because I actually met him a few years ago, and I spoke to him about it, and it was talk about some UK label had said, we'll get Dario G to produce Maniac over for the UK. They were just like, oh, this track has been so big here. I flipping spoke to Simon Cowell about it.
Maniac.
I was on the phone to Simon Cowell. He was like, I'm very sorry, but I'm in I'm in an open top in Miami at the moment, so it's a bit noisy. And he was like, yeah, and he was like, so you got this track, yeah? And I was like, yeah, it's been pretty big here, but I was like, I just kind of I need somebody to maybe rethink it or reproduce it for the UK, and so he was. Louis loved it. Louis Walsh loved it. He loved the fact that it kind of did what it did here, as much as it annoyed him for what it did, because it stopped Westlife getting seven
Yeah, I was
consecutive
about to
number
say.
ones in a row. So he was a bit pissed about that, but at the same time, he loved it, and he really wanted to try and make something happen with it in the UK. And Simon was, of course, his best pal at the time, so that's how that came about. But
And it didn't though. Like it stays. It's remastered, but
it
it
never made.
stayed pure to.
It never made it to the UK. I sat at a table, and there was a bidding war going on between two labels, and the label sat there, picked up a pen, and went, "I'm writing you a check right now for £250,000 to license this track." And Billy from Abbey Discs at the time was like, "Okay, we'll just think about this." And he didn't
Oh,
accept.
no,
He
we
did.
don't need to think.
No, yeah, I was kind of going, it's 250 grand. Louis, are you sure about that? Or Billy? But we just didn't know. And I'm probably going zipping around the place here, but me and Billy and Abbey Discs, we kind of had a bit of a fight then as well, because lawyers got involved, and once it went to number one, everything changed. So it wasn't just me walking into Billy and being, all right, Billy, how you doing? It was like, oh well, I've got representation now. And Billy then had legal representation, and it was a case of, well, we can't really do anything until you sign this, and this is a contract which basically says that I own you for the next 4 or 5 years. And I'm kind of going, I don't know whether I want to do that. I don't know whether I should do that, so
It's the chaos of success, isn't it?
it
Like
yeah
just
it
everything
really,
gets more complicated.
yeah. And it just, it absolutely blew up into a whole pile of shit, to be honest with you. So like I say, I walked away from it. And I always was like, how do I reproduce this, or how do I recreate it, or how can I make it better? And I swear to you, I must have tried to do it 10 times over the 20 years and never got close to it. Always kept going to, like, it is what it is. If you change it into anything else, it even when I was talking to other producers, I was sort of saying the fact that it sounds crap is actually probably part of what has made
Huge
it,
selling point. When you can hear that crowd, I think I heard it was in Wesley's. I didn't know it was in
Wow.
Temple thing, but when you can hear that crowd, that kind of muffly echo of the crowd, there's something that makes you feel like you're there. Yeah, you almost feel like you're a part of it rather than it's in someone's studio. And
Yeah.
I think there's that kind of. It nearly goes back to the tangibility thing that we were talking about. There's something more tangible of hearing that crowd. It makes me feel like I'm there a bit more.
Yeah, and that was when we actually released it. The really important thing for me was that we had that crowd,
Yeah.
because they were as much a part of the track as I was in terms of the performance. But I also realized pretty quickly that if you play that out somewhere, you hear this crowd, you automatically think that that's what's happening in the room. So I think a lot of people to start with were kind of going, well, everybody else is doing it, so why don't I? They were participating because they could hear other people were involved with it. So there wasn't that case of, do I need to know the words to this? It was already happening within the track, so but yeah, a really tough, like a great time. Don't get me wrong, like an amazing experience around about 2000 to have that opportunity to sort of just break through everything else that's going on. And unless you were kind of around at that time, you won't appreciate how difficult it was to actually do that, amongst all of the major labels. Some really good times, some crazy moments of, receiving awards in front of U2 in the Point Depot as it was back then, just to be this kind of DJ from Dublin to have broken through, amazing. But then really kind of sort of sad times that followed, because it was like a massive come up and then suddenly this huge drop down,
Yeah.
which is like, there isn't, another Maniac 2001. and then 2002, and a whole sort of, body of work here. This
Yeah.
is just what this track is. And then the realization that you're the guy that did it.
Yeah.
And forevermore, you are the guy that did Maniac.
Yeah. I mean, that's special because, like, you have think of the panoply of artists there that have huge careers, but are just kind of will fade out of existence. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. Like, they'll be around, like, the Cooks. I think there's so many bands there
Yeah.
that have
Yeah.
just come and go. And, like, it's only maybe when you hear a record on, it's like, oh, who's that band? Where are they? But, like, there's a legacy with Maniac. Like, it's
Yeah.
almost, I feel like the unofficial Irish anthem sometimes when you hear it, because it just gets people up. It's like it draws people to the dance floor. It makes people happy. And to have your name associated with something that I think will just live on and kind of, that has a legacy is
Yeah.
more important, I think, than having 6 mediocre albums.
Yeah.
That's what I think. If you asked me here, 6 albums that are you're going to do well, or just that one
That one
banger
big
that
one.
is
Yeah.
just going to be, it's just so well known. Like, you even seen there a Picnic, man, when that came on. Like, it does something to the crowd. You can feel the energy shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an
Yeah.
excitement builds. It simmers up.
I'm really grateful for the fact that, now I'm in the position that I'm in, because, the last 3 years in particular have just been really great. And, like, I'm a strong believer of everything for a reason. I don't think if things had happened differently around 2000, if I hadn't have walked away from it, if all of that didn't happen, and even things that happened in 2015, which we can get to in a few minutes, if all of that sort of bad stuff didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am now. And where I am now is, with the benefit of hindsight, more mature, but also really able to enjoy things like the Picnic, because it all sort of makes sense, and I can play the tracks that I want to play, and I can get to Maniac without feeling like I've just jumped from, Indian to Chinese in terms of language difference. It's like, that's the way it kind of felt to me before. It was like Maniac is just so far away from everything else that I'm doing, whereas now it all seems kind of complete. And I've been in the studio with people, and I've recorded with people, and I've seen, real songwriting talent and real vocal talent and real sort of people who can write incredible lyrics, and they never get even close to where I have been able to get to.
Yeah.
And they might spend their whole careers trying to have that one hit or to get that track out. And a lot of the time they just give up, because it's just, oh man, I've tried so hard, I can't do this forever, So I'm extremely, extremely grateful to have my name beside a track that is up there, with the top 5 biggest selling tracks of all time in Ireland.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hilarious, because it's probably only somewhere like Ireland that something like this could happen.
No.
Something as ridiculous as this, because, like you say, it really is held with such high esteem. And, just a few months back, I was over in New York, and I was playing in New York, and 70% of the audience was Irish, and 30% of them were Americans. And the 70% Irish knew the track, but the 30% Americans kind of sat there for a minute, but then within a few minutes they were all over, because they were like, this is Irish, this is great.
Yeah.
I feel more Irish now that I'm kind of involved with whatever this moment is,
Yeah.
But
That's what I'm saying. And on the unofficial Irish anthem, it gets Irish people on their feet. Like, it's straight away they're up to that. And it's, in any setting you hear that, the minute that song comes on, whether you're at a wedding, whether you're at a club, no matter where it is, that song comes on and people are up. And it just, there's a happiness that's drawn out of you when that song comes on. Which is just, it's magic. And do you know what? Even to touch back there on a point you mentioned a moment ago, like, I think what made the Picnic there, that performance so special as well, is because I hadn't seen Mark McCabe in 2002, 2003, at something 2004, 2010. Like, it was this, because I hadn't seen all them years. It's like there's a novelty then, and it's like this. It makes it more special. That kind of rarity, seeing it then at that, and that's a huge crowd. Like, that's probably, they were maybe in the same boat. It was like this big special kind of treat to have, Mark McCabe playing at the at the picnic. That I think, if you had went on with that deal, and that's the kind of benefit of hindsight. You just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. Like back then, it
No,
was probably awful and all kind of going.
no, look, yeah, and it just wasn't meant to be. That's
Yeah.
the reality of it, and that was the thing that like I consciously made the decision over the years. Like when I kind of, if I take 2005 as the year that I went, I'm done with this. From that point on, like I didn't purposely try and sort of bury the track, but I didn't do anything to help it. So like it wasn't available on streaming platforms. You had to go and find it. And it
Oh.
seemed, the thing that I realized with it was that it it seemed that the less I did with it, the more it managed to organically grow. So I didn't need to be out there pushing it on any social platforms or jumping up and down on TV shows or doing radio interviews or anything. It kind of just went off and lived its own little life for a while. And it was 2015 at the picnic that the chance was given to me to go back and sort of perform it as a sort of, it's 15 years since Maniac.
Yeah.
Nicky Byrne and Jenny Green had done this kind of, let's get Maniac back to number one because it's 15 years since it was released. Electric Ireland said, do you want to perform, at the Electric Picnic at our nostalgia stage? And I was in a situation where things were changing for me and I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
I kind of had to take the gig. And I didn't expect much to happen, but it was that year, 2015, where it all just kind of came home. And it was a much smaller tent and a much smaller stage, but the energy that day at the Electric Picnic was just insane. And it was like 15 years of people just waiting for this moment, to sort of experience this track live. And ever since, 10 years later, I'm still riding that horse.
Yeah, that is wild. So 10 years, and like, did that give you, like, did that springboard you then a bit more kind of
Yeah,
back into like a better place with the track?
totally. Yeah, because I stopped thinking about who didn't like the track and I saw for myself for the first time the people who did,
Yeah.
and they really, really loved it. It was like I didn't realize how much admiration people had for the track and how many people were out there having a really good time in their life with that track as the soundtrack to that moment. And I think that's the thing that it's kind of done, is it's just adopted itself to moments in people's lives that they can look back on really fondly, beside all the shit that might happen in their life. That this track is just one of those things that immediately brings them back to a time where they felt good and happy and they were in the right place with the right people doing whatever it was that they were doing. Which is, that's the special thing about music. And to have something like that, to be responsible for something like that is really, really special. And it's a privilege, it really is a privilege to kind of be given that opportunity.
Yeah.
And literally since 2015, I've, been to Australia, Germany, America, all over Ireland, speaking to people who have that admiration for that track. And then luckily for me, in the space of those 10 years, there's been a big resurgence of all those tracks that sat around at that same time. So it's kind of a double pleasure for me because I get to perform Maniac as part of, a set where I'm playing tracks that, I grew up listening to. And I'm playing remixes of those tracks now that, are resonating with, a different audience. So,
Yeah. Like, that's it. I remember like Zombie Nation, I think was on your track. Did you have Operation Blade? Like, I remember all them tunes. Like, when I'd be at the teenage discos, like, there was a place in Tullamore called the Harriers.
oh,
Like, an old like rugby club, and it just turned it into this. It's hard to believe like this stuff was allowed to go on, but it was like all these like tribal clans meeting up and just going crazy, and anything could kick off, anything could happen, and all them tunes just
deadly.
booming in the background. Like, it's
Yeah.
and again, it's such nostalgia. I think that this kind of that millennial generation now, I think, because I think the digitization and technology has taken so much of that tangibility from when that time that track came out, that I think there's that nostalgic hunger to constantly try to get back to them
For sure.
experiences. Uh,
Yeah.
and that is, it's like stepping through a portal when you hear that song. Like I feel like I'll be back in the Harriers,
Yeah.
having the time of my life, probably 16, 17.
Yeah.
But that is the power of music. And so tell us, like, playing gigs then. So you had EP this year. Have you any upcoming gigs, or what else maybe have you played this year?
Yeah. I like it's been like such a good summer. So this was
Brilliant.
like, Maniac 25. This was the year that we said, okay, well, this is Maniac 25. This
Yeah.
is the 25th anniversary. Let's absolutely just sort of, not rinse this, but let's, make something of it this year because it is, it's a landmark year,
Yeah.
25 years. Um, so like every gig that I did this summer was like 5,000 capacity minimum. Just festivals everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was just so good. It was just amazing. Like there has been the death of the Irish nightclub.
Yeah.
I can confirm that that has pretty much concluded, and there are
Yeah.
very, very few country nightclubs left.
Very
Um,
few.
and the upside to that is that people have moved outdoors and they've scaled it up bigger, and the events that are happening are just amazing, and people are taking on spaces and putting up marquees and making something across a weekend rather than trying to rinse something all year, so it becomes something special in itself, all those events. But I've just had a really good time. Like I'm playing the Three Arena this weekend again. That's probably like the fifth time I've played the Three Arena, which is like, what? Um,
And
yeah,
that
it's
must be
class.
magic then, is it?
It
To
is
just to
because,
feel that kind of the buzz of the crowd and like,
yeah, it's magical. It really is, and it's something that I always kind of wanted to do. Like I was always involved with like sound and lighting and staging and stuff like that, and I always hoped that my career would someday lead me to the point where I'm actually walking up those steps onto that stage with all that lighting and
yeah,
sound and in these
brilliant.
venues. So it's a dream come true for me, to be honest with you. And I hope it continues. Next year is looking really good as well in terms of events that are booked in. But the best part about all of this is that like we did the Maniac 25 gig in March of 2025, depending on when you're listening to this. But like I had Safragio,
Saffron, yeah. The
Snap,
bongo, isn't it?
yeah,
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 yeah.
Snap were there. I regularly play with Sash, Cascada, Ian Van Dahl, all of these
Oh,
legends that, wrote tunes that I grew up listening to.
yeah.
I'm actually on the bill and on the same stage as them, and it's just incredible. It's
Man.
amazing. It's really great.
I'm so happy to hear that because like I invited you on, like I didn't know this story about the love hate kind of relationship or the hate you got like kind of for the tune or like any of that kind of, so to hear all this context then just come up during the show and then to find where you are now, it just seems like it's a beautiful story kind of now.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really is. Like it feels like it worked out.
It absolutely did, and it's one of those things. And I say this to people now that there were some real dark moments in there.
That's
We
it.
we, we haven't gone that deep, but there were really some dark moments in there. And if I ever meet somebody or talk to somebody and they're having an issue and they're like, I just don't understand what's going on, and or they're frustrated about something that's happening in their life or whatever, there is absolutely no question in my mind that sometimes it has to go wrong for it to go right. And it is always darkest before the dawn, and you might think it's the worst time of your life, but it's meant to be for something else to happen and for you to evolve into something else. And if you were to ask me would I go back and change anything, I absolutely would not, because even through the hate and the pain and the shit and the dark side to it,
Mm.
um I wouldn't have ended up where I am now if
Yeah.
that hadn't have happened. So there is that saying where everything happens for a reason, and I absolutely am testament to that. You know, so if there is anybody listening that's wondering, you know, why has this happened and why am I doing this? You just gotta you trust the process,
Yeah.
you know, and like I would much rather be doing this now, still doing it now, than to have burnt it out over 2 or 3 years and
Yeah.
not be able to do it forevermore, you know, because you've kind of had your shot and that's it.
Yeah. And I think that is just, I think that's a beautiful message and kind of wisdom, I suppose, to finish up on, because that is, and everyone will go through, like, you know, at some stage, that kind of process where they'll think everything's falling apart, it's not working out by varying degrees. You know, it might be minor, but it'll feel huge. It might be huge. But I think that message of kind of, you know, as you said, just kind of have the faith, you know, it will
Yeah.
work out. You know, if one door closes, you know, hopefully the other one opens and it'll be a better door.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to see over the hedge when you're caught
For
in the
sure.
maze, really, you
No,
know.
no, absolutely. Yeah. And look, I was like 6 feet under.
Yeah.
Like I was 6 feet under at times with this, you know, so, but
Yeah.
luckily, you know, I hope that it's the case for everybody else, but
6 feet under, and now you're playing to 6,000 plus. So I think
yeah,
that's a lovely
yeah,
way to end
it's a
it.
good place to be.
Mark, look, thanks so much, man. Thanks so
Not
much
at
for
all.
sharing that story. I know parts of
Not
it
at
were
all.
fairly raw as well, but yeah, I think it's a fascinating journey. You know, such a great track, and it's just been a pleasure chatting to you. So thanks a million.
Yeah, likewise. Not at all. My pleasure.
Thanks a mil. Bye.
All right, brother.